KEF 咧推出佢哋第一對杜比 Atmos Enable 嘅喇叭，咁啊變咗咧喺個喇叭上面咧，只係擺一隻 Enable 嘅喇叭，向住天花射翻落嚟咧，就有呢個天花板下喇叭嘅效果啦。咁啊呢個 R50咧就引用咗好多 KEF 嘅獨特嘅技術啦。咁我哋咧就同呢個設計師 Mark Dodd 傾偈啦。
The Dolby spec requires you to have a loudspeaker that works from a relatively high-low frequency, it's about 90 Hz, and the mid-range dispersion has to be within some quite tight limits. So in fact, if we were using a normal tweeter without a waveguide, we would have to have some kind of recess. In fact, most of the Dolby-enabled speakers have a piece of wood that goes round and a sloping baffle, and that's not because they're trying to hide the sloping baffle, that's to get the mid-range to be directional enough, particularly around 2000 Hz. A normal tweeter, where you're crossing it over, has got very wide dispersion. It'll be out to 180 degrees at least. So to get the Dolby Atmos spec, you need to do something to focus the sound more. And if you have a baffle that's sloped and you put a wooden lip around it, then you can actually get from the diffraction some focusing effect. But of course you also get reflections, you get cavity resonances, and you lose sound quality doing that. We also have to slightly boost 5 kHz, which and put a dip at 10 kHz. And this is to do some compensation for what's called a head-related transfer function. So by making those alterations to the frequency response, it makes you hear the sound as coming from higher up. And that and the reflection from the ceiling allow Dolby to produce a sound that appears to come from up high, even though the loudspeaker is just on top of the floor standing speaker. So there is actually quite a bit that's different from a normal loudspeaker. You can't get a normal loudspeaker and use it for Dolby Atmos and expect it to work properly. You actually have to have a specially designed unit. What we've been able to do is just to rely on our waveguide, which matches the tweeter directivity to the mid-range unit directivity. And that means that we don't actually need to do anything at all to meet the Dolby spec. Our directivity is already very well controlled. The other thing is that I mentioned the head-related transfer function where you need to boost slightly at 5000 Hz. Now, most tweeters don't have sufficient sensitivity to do that. So unless you have a tweeter that's loud enough, you can't put any boost on it. So overall, apart from the normal quality aspects of the UniQ in terms of having good directivity, you can actually get the Dolby specifications satisfied better. For home cinema you need to have high sound levels, and the drive unit's got a large voice coil on the bass unit, and you get an efficiency gain from the Tangerine waveguide and the waveguide formed by the diaphragm of the speaker, the bass speaker. So the result of that is actually we can get very high sound pressure levels. We do a ceiling speaker that's THX spec that's very suitable for it, but there are some differences that I think they're not really absolute, they're actually preference differences. For me, I like a diffuse sound for room ambience, and that's my priority. So if I was listening to a music recording, I'd want the ambience to sound very natural. To get the best diffuse sound for that, the speakers that go on top of a normal cabinet are actually slightly better because they give a slightly more diffuse sound. Whereas if you want to localize height as well as possible, obviously a speaker that's up high is the best way of doing it. So it depends a little bit on the priority, whether you want the ambience effect to be best or whether you want to have the height being most clearly defined.